Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Appropriations Committee bill hearings for March 29th. As you can see, we're dealing with the understudy, as some of our leadership is over meeting with the Senate. We have about 7 bills to hear. We'll start with SB 178, which I believe is a departmental bill, program open space, local projects, federal funds. I think we have Hillary Bell and Bunky Luffman from the Department of Natural Resources. Turn the floor over to you.
Hi, Mr. Chair. For the record, and members of the committee, for the record, my name is Bunky Luffman, Legislative Director for the Department of Natural Resources. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on Senate Bill 178. It would lift the requirement that applicants for program open space local funding also apply to the federal government for funding. The application would still require the applicant to provide information on the federal funds received for tracking purposes. The bill is a result of conversations with local governments. And I want to note that Maryland Association of County Park and Recreational Administrators did submit a letter of support during our first hearing, I presume here as well. I would also like to introduce our department's Director of Land Acquisition and Planning, Hillary Bell, who's on the call. She's our subject matter expert and is available for any question. In conclusion, I would like to thank the committee for your consideration and respectfully request a favorable report.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding SB 178? Going once, going twice. Great. Well, thank you to DNR for being here. We appreciate it. Colleagues, will now move to SB 801, State Health Plan, Chesapeake Bay Commission retirees. I believe we have Eric from Chair Gazzoni's office with us.
Hello, Chair McIntosh and Vice Chair Chang and members of the Appropriations Committee. As introduced, my name is Eric Benner, here on behalf of Senator Gazzoni to present Senate Bill 801, the State Health Plan, Chesapeake Bay Commission retirees, which passed unanimously out of the Senate. The purpose of SB 801 is to include employment with the Chesapeake Bay Commission as eligible service with the state participation as a retiree in the state employee and retiree health and welfare benefits program. The bill was amended to ensure that it conformed with other similar entities that participate in the state program, and we ask for a favorable report.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any questions regarding SB 801? Terrific. Eric, do you want to move on to your next bill, SB 802, Maryland Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports?
Yep. So Senate Bill 802, the Maryland Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports Membership and Coordinated Community Supports Partnership Fund revisions. This bill is intended to make modest adjustments to the new Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports, which was created in the blueprint for Maryland's future legislation that was previously approved by the Senate Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. For further description and any questions, we have Mark Luckner, and I will defer to him, the Executive Director of the Maryland Community Health Resources Commission Office.
Great. Also, my former grad school professor, Mark, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, it's good to see you. I'll keep my comments very brief. You have a copy of the written testimony from the Maryland Community Health Resource Commission. We're flattered that the General Assembly 2 years ago asked us to help staff this new consortium as part of the blueprint bill that Eric said a minute ago. And as he said, this bill is a modest bill to make some adjustments to help us get ready to launch the new consortium on community support partnerships. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the consortium, which is in the process of finalizing the appointments or the work of our commission. And thanks again. It's good to see you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thanks for teaching me so well that you have to call me Mr. Chairman. Any questions on?
You have a lot more. You should be thanking Senator Feldman a lot more than me.
Well, this is not a good week to thank the Senate for things, but any questions on SB 802? Great. Well, thank you, Eric and Mark. Appreciate you guys being here. Colleagues, we will now turn, I think he's on. Senator Kramer, are you ready?
I am.
SB 152, Public Institutions of Higher Education. Please go ahead, Senator Kramer.
Thank you for that. And I know that where the chair of this committee is, because she just left our finance committee before I ran back to my office to join you all. So thank you for that, Mr. Chair. Ben Kramer introducing Senate Bill 152, and colleagues, this bill's become a little controversial. As introduced, the bill addresses a very serious concern with giving our college students an opportunity to graduate, complete their educations, and to find employment. Under the current situation, our universities and colleges are on a routine basis holding the transcripts of students who have debt, holding those transcripts hostage, so that if the student is not in a position financially to be able to pay that debt, the student is not given the opportunity to have their transcript in an effort to either complete their education at a different school where they may be paying less money, or to take a job because they need their transcript in order to get that employment. And the consequence is then we are denying our students the opportunity to get a job, to complete their education so that they can pay the debt. It has been shown repeatedly that withholding transcripts is an ineffective and inefficient way to collect debt. And the bill before you, as introduced in the Senate, would have simply prohibited that practice. It would not deny the universities or the colleges the opportunity to collect the debt. It does not forgive the debt. It simply respects the fact that the transcript is the work product of the students and a reflection of the hard work that they have put into their education and all those course credits that they already did pay for, but now do not have evidence of that hard work. We, do a lot of talking about how do we help students graduate college? How do we deal with this problem of student debt? And there's been everything from assistance to proposals to forgive student debt. This does not forgive it. It simply says you can't withhold the transcript and prevent that student from either getting a job or completing their education so that they do then have the means to pay the debt. Now, I thought most importantly, at the Senate bill hearing on this, there was a letter from the Office of the Attorney General, and we get those all the time. They come in, we see them routinely on bills where the Attorney General's office, weighs in and says, yeah, good bill, we support it. No, bad bill, we don't like it. In this case, in the original letter that came from the Office of the Attorney General, not only did they indicate significant support for the bill as introduced, but most importantly, throughout their commentary, they opined about the universities and colleges doing this is illegal in the state of Maryland. And in their concluding sentence on the bill as introduced, the Attorney General's office offered the following: notwithstanding the likely illegality of the practice of withholding student transcripts, the division supports Senate Bill 152 because it will place higher education institutions on notice of the illegality of this practice and hopefully put a stop to it being used by Maryland institutions. I think that is exceedingly noteworthy, colleagues, as the Attorney General's office opined unequivocally that the fact that this is happening in Maryland is an illegal practice. I know that the university system will be here to offer their objection to this legislation, and quite frankly, I think it's embarrassing that they are going to do this. Several states have already begun to address this, including California, which has strictly prohibited this practice for public institutions as well as private institutions. And somehow, all of the colleges and universities in California are not being put at harm by virtue of this practice being prohibited. Now, having said all of that, colleagues, the bill came to the floor from the committee with jurisdiction on the bill, heavily amended. They put into the bill, instead of the total prohibition, that it would apply exclusively to public universities, not to private institutions, which is clearly problematic. And furthermore, put into the legislation that you have before you now, that this would apply only to public universities up to $1,000 worth of debt, up to $1,000. It also requires that the university work out with the student a repayment program for up to that $1,000. Now, my concern, and I raised this on the Senate floor when I special ordered the bill, and people were shocked that why would the bill sponsor special order his own bill on the floor? And that's because I was very concerned we might be setting a bad precedent by allowing this to continue in private institutions and in public institutions for amounts greater than $1,000. And since the Attorney General's office made it very clear that they believe this is illegal, I didn't want to make it a legal practice. So I contacted the Assistant Attorney General, who wrote that letter and has subsequently sent you all a very different letter with regard to the issue. And I asked him, and I said, are we doing more harm than good? Because I will ask that the bill be recommitted, or I will work on an effort to kill it on the floor. Or are we making an incremental step that could be useful? And after speaking with him, he indicated that he felt it would be an incremental step and it would possibly be helping students. So I ended up supporting the bill coming out of the Senate, but it is before you now. And that same Attorney General has sent a scathing letter of opposition to the bill now, as amended by the committee with jurisdiction. And I only wish that it had, whatever the concern was when I spoke with him, had that message been conveyed to me. So colleagues, the bill is before you to look at and decide. Is it an incremental step that might benefit our students? And you can look at the fiscal note and make that call. Is it a terrible public policy and therefore should be totally banned? And perhaps you all could strip those amendments from the Senate, restore the bill to the way it was introduced, and send a message back to the Senate committee with jurisdiction. Or, of course, there's always that third option, just kill the bill. But I am going to leave that in your capable hands. As much as we love to have our bills find their way to passage, I also don't want a bill that's going to do harm. The whole point here is to benefit struggling students who are simply looking to complete their education. This is not students running scams. This is not students who are trying to put one over on the colleges or the universities. They need their transcripts because they are either in debt because obviously they can't afford to complete their education and are either going to try to find employment and need proof of their hard work up until this point, or they need to transfer to a less expensive school and try to complete their education, get a job, and pay that student debt back. So once again, colleagues, very inefficient way to collect debt. It does not prohibit the universities or colleges from doing anything else to collect the debt, and it certainly doesn't forgive the debt. Mr. Chair, I thank you and the committee for your time. Certainly happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Senator Kramer. Colleagues, I believe that was the favorable testimony. Before we get to the rest of the testimony, we do have a question from Delegate Kittleman.
I'm sorry, did you call on me, Mr. Chair?
We have a question from Delegate Kittleman.
Thank you. I actually have a couple, Senator. The language in the letter, and I guess they'll be here, was likely illegal. And I, as a lawyer, don't see what law it might violate. So if you know, fine. Otherwise, perhaps they can answer it for me.
Yes, and in fact, in the Attorney General's initial letter, the Assistant Attorney General opined that moreover, whether these academic institutions have the legal right to deny students access to their transcripts as a debt collection method is legally questionable. Academic institutions are not secured creditors, do not have the right to withhold promised goods or services as a method of debt collection. And then again, they continued on, but certainly I hope that answers the question you had, Delegate Kittle.
It may. Do you know what the frequency of this method of debt collection was?
Unfortunately, we have no clue whatsoever, although I will direct you to the updated, now none of this information was provided when this bill was heard in the Senate. The fiscal and policy note is completely different than the one that was originally provided for the bill hearing in the Senate. But it indicates that within this fiscal note, that the CCU, which is the entity that collects the debts, the Central Collections Unit, portfolio includes more than 44,500 accounts with an unpaid balance of $1,000 or less, totaling 6.4 million, and more than 9,900 accounts with an unpaid balance of more than $1,000, totaling $54 million. So evidently, it's not being, the universities and colleges utilizing this as a debt collection tool is not particularly effective. And again, that's what studies have indicated, which is why other states, and in fact, quite frankly, the Secretary of Education just this past December in a major statement indicated that colleges and universities across the country should move to start prohibiting this practice, that it is time that this practice be abandoned. And as I said, because it has proven to be inefficient and ineffective.
I still didn't get an answer. We don't know how many times this was used, if at all.
I'm assuming the reason all this debt is outstanding is because universities have said, pay it or you don't get your transcripts, Delegate Kittleman. Beyond that, I doubt that there's anybody, who's keeping a statistic of, somebody's called and said, I need my transcript, and they're told, sorry, you can't have it, you owe debt. But if the universities are doing that and they're willing to share that information, God bless them.
I'm not sure why we're passing a bill if we don't know that there's something being done. That would be wrong.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Delegate Kittleman.
Isn't that so? Delegate Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have a question, Senator Kramer, but I just wanted to say that I have certainly been aware of many students being negatively impacted with this practice. And if there's any way that I can be of help, I certainly would like to do that.
Delegate Proctor, thank you for that. And I do appreciate it. And I will share with you, since the bill was introduced, students across the state have been contacting me and saying, thank you. This has been a problem for me. And in fact, the University of Maryland student, whatever association they have, when they learned of it, said, wow, big issue for us. Thank you. So I appreciate that, Delegate Proctor.
Great. Thank you, Senator Kramer. I don't see any other questions for the sponsor, so we'll now turn to our witnesses. First up, we have Patrick Hogan from the University System of Maryland, favorable with amendment. Mr. Hogan, just a reminder, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, appreciate the opportunity to testify on the bill. And as you heard the chair say, the university system is favorable with amendments on the bill, not in opposition, as the senator mentioned earlier. The U.S. Senate proposed an amendment to the bill on the Senate side as well when we came in favorable with amendments to set a dollar threshold, an amount by which our institutions can continue to use this tool to assist in the collecting of delinquent debt, and we're favorable on the bill with that amendment that the Senate did adopt. I'll say it because the senator brought it up, and he kept saying the initial letter from the OAG. We have, and the committee should have, and if you don't, I'll get it to you, a subsequent letter from the OAG saying that this practice is not a violation of the Consumer Protection Act, is not illegal under the Consumer Protection Act, which is the main law cited in the initial letter that Senator Kramer had. So I'll just say that right off the bat. Our institutions do work closely with our students, experience financial struggles to ensure that they're able to continue and complete their studies. We have campus financial aid specialists and student affairs who work on an individual basis with these students who have debts because they don't want these debts to end up going to central collections. And they really do try to resolve these issues with students as evidenced by our low default rates. This is really typically a last resort. And for many students, the transcript withholding is a reminder of a small outstanding debt, and it is quickly remedied. For those students without the ability to pay, requests for transcripts releases are reviewed on a case-by-case basis, and typically they are released for purposes of employment. And also our campuses usually work with the students if they can't afford to pay to set up a payment plan to release their transcript as well. So the likely impact of restricting this practice is more outstanding debt being sent to the central collection unit, which we don't think is good for the institution or the student. So as I said, with the amendment that the Senate adopted, we are in favor of SB 152.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for the system? Okay, we do have one unfavorable. Winston Berkman-Breen of the Student Borrower Protection Center. You have 2 minutes. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. And for the record, my name is Winston Berkman-Breen. I'm the Policy Counsel at the Student Borrower Protection Center. We're a national nonprofit policy organization committed to studying and ending the student debt crisis. I thought that Senator Kramer did an excellent job laying out the bill as introduced, so I'll just sort of skip to why my organization and a coalition of 8 other organizations went from being favorable to in opposition to the bill once it was amended. Happy to answer any questions on the back end, so I'll just quickly focus to keep things moving on this sort of 2 main points. The first is, for reasons that there's no real policy or factual justification for it, the amended bill has been narrowed to apply only to public institutions, but private institutions, nonprofit and for-profit, also engage in transcript withholding. So to fully and wholesomely address this issue, it should apply to all institutions as initially suggested by Senator Kramer. By way of example, I spent 30 seconds on Google and found that Johns Hopkins and Goucher both publicly say on their websites they engage in transcript withholding if you have an account balance with the school. So to address this issue, it should apply to all schools. But more concerningly is actually picking up on something Mr. Hogan just said, is the $1,000 threshold. So if you have less than $1,000 in a debt, the transcript cannot be withheld. If you have greater, you have to enter a payment plan before you can have your transcript released. Sort of 2 things on that. One, it seems like an arbitrary number, right? The $1,000 threshold doesn't really line up with the reality of when students are experiencing these debts. And that's because one of the large, more serious ways in which these debts accrue and accrue overnight to a large sum, often over $1,000, is what's called return to Title IV. And this is when someone withdraws mid-semester, the federal government requires the school to return their federal financial aid package to the federal government at a prorated basis. Now, because of that, we're often talking about sums over $1,000, and the school then turns to the student and says, you have to pay us now, right? We have an account balance because of this, so you owe us these funds. Now, especially for low-income students, this is particularly problematic. Pell Grants, for instance, which are exclusively for low-income students, have a cap of $6,500, right? So you can see how—
You have to summarize.
Oh, sure thing. So in short, and I'd be happy to answer any particular questions about this, the bill no longer addresses the problem it sought to address, right? I think Senator Kramer laid out the initial merit to the bill, but I'm going to be a bit more vociferous when I say the amended version just doesn't do it. And for that reason, I'm in opposition. I also would note at Mr. Cogan's comment, I'd love to see this latest letter from the Attorney General's office, because the March 22nd letter that I have seen says it is a violation of the Consumer Protection Act. So if there's a third opinion, that we should add that to the record.
Thank you very much. I think we have all the letters in our bill file, and I would encourage members to read the letters for themselves instead of having the witnesses try to characterize them for us. We have the primary documents. Are there any questions for Mr. Berkman-Breen? Great. Thank you all. That ends the bill hearing on SB 152. Colleagues, we will now turn to SB 862, Senator McCray, Baltimore City, Maryland Transit Administration, Transit Service Public School Students and Youth Workers. Senator McCray, are you still with us? Did we lose him? Okay, why don't we jump over then instead to Senator Bailey, and we can circle back to Senator McCray. Senator Bailey, are you with us? Great, thank you. First up, Senator Bailey, is SB 79, Higher Education Senatorial Scholarships Program Accreditation.
Good afternoon, and thank you. And to the distinguished members of the committee, I am Senator Jack Bailey, for the record, District 29, representing St. Mary's in Calvert County. Today, I'm going to introduce Senate Bill 79, Higher Education Senatorial Scholarships Program Accreditation. This bill alters provisions of law relating to awarding senatorial scholarships to students to use at out-of-state colleges and universities. Under current law, these funds can only be awarded to students who will be studying in an academic area that is not available at a college or university in the state. This bill would require that an in-state program of study to be accredited before it can be considered a comparable program. Last year, we went through this. We attempted to award a scholarship to a student who believed the program of study that they intended to pursue was not available in Maryland, but they were denied after it was found that a program offered at a Maryland school was considered to be comparable despite the fact that it had not been accredited. When my office inquired as to with MCAC about this issue, we were told that the laws as written does not allow MCAC to consider accreditation when evaluating comparable academic programs. While I strongly agree with the goal of ensuring Maryland taxpayers' money remains in Maryland, it was incredibly difficult to go back to this constituent and make them choose to either enroll in an unaccredited program or lose that financial aid from their scholarship. I don't believe that this is our intention to ask students to make this academic and financial commitment to an unaccredited program. This is emergency legislation. This bill could go in effect so that we award this year's scholarships. This bill passed the Senate 45-0. It's identical to the bill 249 last year that passed the Senate and then actually passed your committee unanimously last year. I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 79. I thank you all for your consideration. I take any questions.
Thank you, Senator Bailey. Any questions for Senator Bailey on SB 79? I do not see any. So, Senator, we can go to your second bill, which is SB 673, Natural Resources Police Force Employees Authority of Secretary. Please go ahead.
Just give me one moment here.
Sure.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about now distinguished members of the committee, Senator Jack Bailey, representing District 29, St. Mary's in Calvert County. Today, we're going to discuss Senate Bill 673, which involves the Natural Resource Police Force. It talks about their authority and the authority of the Secretary. This bill would allow the Natural Resource Police to be governed and managed similarly to how all other statewide police forces operate in Maryland. This bill was requested by the members, the officers involved in the Natural Resource Police to To my knowledge, this bill is the last statewide law enforcement agency where the secretary of the department is not given this authority over the management of their police force. And in 2020, this committee and the full General Assembly passed similar legislation to give the Secretary of General Services the same authority over their police department's force. This language is similar to the provisions of law that govern the Maryland State Police. So the problem that we're trying to address with this bill is that there's a failure and a lack of trust between the employee groups and the Secretary of the Natural Resources and the Superintendent of the Natural Resource Police Force. In our Senate hearing, we saw just how dysfunctional this could be, not only between the department and the employees, but even among employee groups. During the legislative process in the Senate, many of the interested parties, including the department, the Black Officers Association, the FOP, SLEOLA, the former park rangers, all submitted suggestions for amendments. With the bill as amended by the Senate, no one gets everything they want, but this bill gives the Secretary of Natural Resources the same authority over the Natural Resource Police as the Secretary of State Police has over the state police, because as it currently exists, the Secretary and Superintendent are held hostage to the current process, no matter the outcome. As we heard in our hearing, and I think you all are familiar with this, there were 45 promotions in the Natural Resource Police this year, and none of the officers that promoted were Black. Through the current process, the department follows the state personnel and pensions article, which uses a civilian process for police promotions. By being tied to this current statutory language, the department, the secretary, and the superintendent have no accountability for the failure of this promotional process. I know that you've heard about these issues previously with House Bill 605 by Delegate Resnick, and I'm aware that this bill has been rolled into the budget. I want to applaud you and your committee and the House for addressing this important issue, and I believe that both the budget language and Senate Bill 673 are needed and work together to ensure that the Natural Resource Police will have a fair and accountable hiring and promotional process. I agree that no system is perfect and the legislature should not be prescribing each and every promotion. The department should have, and they should develop a policy and a procedure through their own processes, and we should hold them accountable. This bill not only makes changes to the process, but it also requires the department to develop and regularly update an action plan to ensure that the Natural Resource Police reflects the demographics of the state to the extent practical. It also creates a study group that will be able to work through the concerns of the Black Officers Association, as well as any other employees who may be experiencing similar problems. This bill requires the Natural Resource Police to take all actions to pursue diversity and lists very specific issues that need to be addressed based on a similar plan that was required by the 2021 Joint Chairman's Report for the State Police. We all did that last year, as you're familiar. The action plan will provide the necessary guardrails to ensure the department can be held accountable and we can reestablish authority, trust, and results. This bill requires the action plan to be submitted to the General Assembly and posted on their website so we can monitor their progress. As some of you know, I served as a member of the Natural Resource Police as an officer for 30 years. I know how important this agency is to our state and how critical it is that we address these failures as quickly as possible. This bill passed the Senate unanimously. I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 673, and I thank you for your consideration, and I would take any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Before we get to questions, we do have favorable witnesses. I believe we'll start with Vincent Arillo from the Fraternal Order of Police, Chapter 130. Mr. Arillo, you have 2 minutes.
Sorry, I had to unmute there. All right, good afternoon. My name is Vincent Arillo. I'm a police officer with Maryland Natural Resource Police and an executive board member of the FOP 130 DNR Central Lodge. I'm speaking today in favor and support of SB 673. This bill will require the department to advertise open positions for citizens of Maryland of all communities, allowing for the creation of a more diverse police force representing the state of Maryland. Included in this bill are requirements for the Natural Resource Police promotional process. For a few years, the agency went without a promotional test. The promotional process has not been fair, has not been transparent for all members, including protected classes, and has been attempted to be negotiated by the State Law Enforcement Officers Labor Alliance. This bill will allow for direct negotiations between SLEOLA and the Secretary of DNR for a better process that is fair and unbiased for all members. SLEOLA has worked for years to negotiate a fair and transparent process for all eligible members of the agency, and this bill is crucial to creating opportunity for their continued efforts. The Maryland Natural Resource Police is the oldest state law enforcement agency in Maryland, and I frequently meet Maryland citizens who are so appreciative and proud of the work we do. I speak on behalf of our lodge's members when I say we need this bill to create an opportunity for an even better agency for our members to work in, and one that all Maryland citizens will continue to appreciate and be proud of. As a representative of FOP 130 DNR Central Lodge, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this bill and ask the committee for favorable support for this crucial legislation.
Thank you very much. Brian Gill was also signed up as favorable. I do not believe he is on. Is that correct? Great. Any questions for Senator Bailey or Mr. Arillo? Great. That concludes the bill hearing on SB 673. Senator McCray, are you with us?
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bailey. Senator McCray, are you with us?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
Great. We will do the bill hearing on SB 862, Baltimore City, Maryland Transit Administration, Transit Services for Public School Students and Youth Workers.
Thank you. It looked like half of appropriations is in B&T right now. For the record, Corey McCray, Senator from the Legislative District, coming to you on behalf of Senate Bill 862. I'll be very short, Mr. Chair, in reference to Senate Bill 862. It looks like it's in the same context as House Bill 1055, which is a bill that you all have already heard at this time. What it does is it makes sure that our young people that's going to Baltimore City Public Schools ride the MTA between certain hours for free. It also ties in with our Youth Works program, which is a 6-week employment program for our young people, making sure that they can also have viable transit during that opportunity. And that is the gist of the bill.
Great. Any questions for Senator McCray? Okay, Senator, we'll see you at conference. Thank you all very much. That concludes our bill hearings for today. On behalf of Chair McIntosh and Vice Chair Chang, thank you all very much. And just a reminder to the committee, we have a voting session at 4 p.m. in the committee room. Thank you all so much. Have a great afternoon.